Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome to the Sunday recap. In this video I try to cover what I've been doing in the last week or so when it comes to games, and I touch on some of the news that caught my eye in the last week or so. So first of all, of course, EVE Online, it is my main game. I still think it's the only real sandbox in the world at the moment, and I enjoy it quite a bit. I must say I've been pretty happy with the amount of time I've played EVE Online last week, despite the fact that it was the holidays and of course there were some family celebrations. I managed to put in a decent amount of time, and I would say in the first 4 or 5 days it's mostly been more Citadel preparation. So I went out and did a bit of mining, some production, try and sell some stuff, and then with the profits, which with the help of the rest of the corporation, we had a decent purse to spend. I go out and try and buy some cheap PI stuff in preparation of the Citadel, and then of course I have to bring all of that together as well. So I would say the first part of the week was spent really well preparing for Citadel, which is of course my main goal in EVE Online at the moment. After that, unfortunately, over the weekend we are hit by a Sunshine incursion in the system where we have the POS, so that is slowing down our activities, but luckily we are prepared for situations like this. So we have secondary bases of operations where we can just continue doing whatever activities we enjoy, and so it's not really a problem. But what is a problem is that I need to do some extra traveling, getting back to the POS to keep the research running, to keep the production running, and maybe add some extra logistics if I want to produce some extra stuff for the market. But it's not really a big deal. Yesterday I did join another one of the raids on a Drifter Hive. This time it was Barbican. You'll get a full report on that next week. But it was a little bit more tricky. So the first time I did it, we had more than 30 people in fleet, and that was actually a pretty smooth ride. This time we had just 25 people, and we encountered some problems. And so it was actually a pretty interesting one. We did make the hive in the end. Yeah, it was not as smooth as the previous one. So if you actually have any interest in joining one of those Drifter Hive operations, then join the Consortium Operations in-game channel, and you'll have your chance to join as well. Honestly, just 5-6 extra guys, not even in the regular Caracal fit that they ask people fly, would have probably helped us smoothen things out quite a little bit. So I highly encourage anyone that wants to experience one of these Drifter Hives at some point to join that in-game channel, their mailing list, and be ready, because they are going to try and redo their runs every week from now on, usually on a Saturday. Moving on from EVE Online, we've got Fallout 4. I did play a decent amount of Fallout 4 as well, continuing with my gunslinger character. I'm also working on a building for my settlements that I can reapply in every settlement, so that I have something that makes it very defensible. It's a good place to live for my settlers, and that's coming along quite nicely as well. So I've spent a little bit of time enjoying Fallout 4. It's definitely a fun game, and I still enjoy playing that quite a bit, almost every day. Honestly, I did play EVE Online every day. I played Fallout 4 almost every day as well. Next up, we've got Path of Exile. Unfortunately, I can't really find a motivation to spend enough time grinding to get through the merciless difficulty at the moment. That's very slow. I only spend a few hours working on Act 2, and I'm taking my time here. I don't feel the pressure or the need to really push myself super hard in Path of Exile at the moment. I'd rather spend some time in EVE Online, to be honest. Just continuing with the preparations for the Citadel. The reason for that is actually I saw that there was a post. I'll quickly come back here to EVE Online. There was a post in the test server feedback forum that basically prepares for everything for the January release to be deployed on CC. So I do think once people get back to work, which should be from next week on, we will actually start to have our first tidbits of information on the January release and maybe even stuff on CC. So I'm looking forward to the next few weeks in EVE Online, and it's probably the reason why I want to spend some more time in EVE. Who knows if there is any Citadel related information, because there were some items I think that CCP wanted to deploy before the actual expansion. And so yeah, I'm definitely hunting for any information and trying to spend as much time as possible in EVE Online. And then for the news, honestly, there's not been a lot of news except that 2016 has started, but there is one game that I'm sort of keeping an eye out for. It is Crowfall. It's an MMO in development. It is being crowdfunded. At the moment they have around 100,000 backers and $6 million in crowdfunded budget. I think this one is pretty interesting, and they came out with a system that they are going to develop for Crowfall, which is very reminiscent of EVE Online. So basically the way I'm looking at Crowfall at the moment is that it's an actual attempt to make a sandbox MMO using a fantasy setting, but the developers have said several times that they really do like everything that EVE Online does, and CCP's development of EVE Online is definitely something that we're seeing again and again in the information that they're releasing for Crowfall. It's pretty early in development, it's in early access, and so I'm not jumping in just yet, but if I'm not mistaken, they're planning for something like an open beta like late next year or late this year. It is 2016 after all. So what was so interesting is that new system that they've developed. I don't think it's on their front page here just yet, but instead of having a single character that dies and then respawns, the idea is that the characters, the bodies, will become a system called vessels, and that really caught my eye because it is very much like what you have in EVE Online. So you basically create these bodies, these vessels that could have their own unique abilities and stats, and then you go out there in the world, and if it gets killed, you actually lose it, just like a ship in EVE Online, and your character becomes your account, which is in their lore like an immortal soul that makes a contract with a god. And it's definitely the EVE Online system brought into a fantasy setting MMO. Over here we've got some information. So you of course have a fantasy setting, and if I'm not mistaken, the basic backstory for Crowfall is that there will be different worlds that people can go to and try to settle, try to get resources from, but they will always have a limited time to do so. So these worlds eventually get destroyed and then new worlds pop up. So that is very reminiscent to me from wormhole space, except that it will not be the same wormhole every time again, but it ends up being destroyed, and then you have a new wormhole popping up somewhere, a new world popping up somewhere where you could try and gather your resources, maybe settle it, fight other people over the resources and things like that. And so their mechanic that they're planning for is something called the hunger at the end of the life cycle of one of these worlds, and there will become it will become harder and harder to actually stay there, and eventually people will have to have an exodus back to maybe a safe set of core worlds, a little bit like HiSec, or to another world that has formed in the meantime. It sounds pretty interesting to me. You'll have stuff like territory conquest, so that feels a little bit like the Nosec, where you can have your alliances conquer territories, create castles, outposts, and things like that. And then we have several campaign rules, which could make it pretty interesting, giving advantage to different factions, or having different rules in there. It is something that's not really present in EVE Online, except maybe the wormhole rules, and incursions have their own set of rules on the environment. That is something that apparently is going to play a pretty major part in Crowfall, which I think could be a pretty good idea. And then we'll have world destruction. So A lot of this will of course be sandboxy, so you know, if you build a castle, other people will be able to tear it down. Sounds pretty good. Of course, there's also the player-driven economy. You know, that's exactly like EVE Online, where you can fill your shops with vendors, establish trade routes between worlds, and build a mercantile empire. You'll also be able to do crafting, resource gathering, so like mining, except that maybe you can have like NPC characters do that. They could be at risk, stuff like that. Sounds pretty interesting. Then thralls and growth and prosperity. So the in-game economy is aimed to become quite player-driven, just like in EVE Online, which is of course very good for a sandbox MMO. And then this I'm not sure if it's a screenshot, but even if it's concept art, I do think it's pretty interesting, because they're actually going to allow people to use resources to like drop mountains and forests, valleys and rivers. So there is apparently a bit more of an RTS feel to the world building, the campaign, the conquering of the world, that they're gonna try and add in Crowfall, which to me sounds pretty interesting. You know, if you're an alliance and you could then really try and transform the territory that you own to your liking. So if you're an alliance that's allied with like a very dark god, you could probably try and create a very dark atmosphere for the territories that you've conquered. That sounds pretty interesting. So we have the different gods and artifacts and relics, and then factions and gods here once again. But this screenshot is something that I've never really seen in another MMO. It's one of those unique facets, and Crowfall does seem to offer quite a few of those. And over here you can see you have a free beta sign up. With open testing is planned to start at the end of 2016. So you have plenty of time to take in any information about Crowfall and prepare for that if it's of any interest to you. I definitely have my eye on this. I do like the fact that the developer of Crowfall sees EVE Online as a good example of what they want to do with their game, and so I do like that aspect of it. The idea of the vessels, I think, is pretty interesting. You know, it is definitely trying to bring the EVE Online system of ships and actual losses into a fantasy MMO, which is something that I don't think any other game out there has really done in a similar fashion just yet. And the potential of this, I do think, is pretty damn awesome, because they've already said that you'll be able to basically craft these vessels. And so I can already imagine something like a really big ritual. You know, if we have Titans in EVE Online, which take an alliance of hundreds, if not thousands of people to actually construct, I can see them trying to implement a system like that as well, where you basically have a very elaborate and very costly ritual that will actually summon a single really powerful vessel. But on top of that, the way Crowfall is planning to do it in this fantasy setting, they actually, I think, have a lot of options as well to tweak the power of all of this. So you could have a Titan-like vessel that is summoned at extremely high cost, but if those things become too ubiquitous, too powerful, they could actually just put up a timer on these and solve the problem that way. So Crowfall came out with the idea of they're gonna try and implement this vessel system, which is very reminiscent to EVE Online. That caught my eye last week, and it's a game that I'm not pledging to that just yet. I feel it's a little bit too early in development from what I've heard and read. It's really just PvP playtests at the moment in a very, very limited session, in a very limited setting. So I would like to at least be able to enjoy the sandbox if I would make a jump in on Crowfall. But so far the game to me looks pretty damn interesting. Anyways, that's really all. There was not a lot of news other than that caught my eye last week. So that's it for this Sunday recap. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.